Well, good morning, everybody. Excuse me, I need to get the settings right. Sorry, this is Phil Sayers speaking. Thank you for taking the time to join us on this session this morning. We're still getting one or two people joining us as we speak, so apologies if I just seem to disappear for a second or two while I admit them. Just a little bit of admin. You have all been set by default to mute, but if you can just double check that your microphones are set to mute so we don't get any interruptions. Similarly, if you can switch off your cameras, again, it'll just make it easier to view the screen. The session should take, I would imagine, something like around sort of 45 minutes or so, and then we've got time for questions at the end. And in terms of submitting questions, for those of you who perhaps haven't used Zoom or something like it before, the control panel that you see in front of you is where you can control whether or not you're muted, whether your camera is on. But it also has a chat facility. So at the end, because there are so many people on the call, and it's increasing as we speak, which is really good news. When we get to the point at the end, if you can submit any questions via chat. I've already had a couple in advance, interestingly, so we'll try and pick up one or two of those at the end. But if you do have any questions, drop them into the chat box and I'll sort of pick up as many as we can towards the end of the session. Okay, so yeah, this is me. This is my ugly mug on the screen right now. I'm Phil Sayers. I look somewhat more disheveled and slightly shaggier than the picture might suggest right now, given the current circumstances. A little bit of background, because I'm pretty sure most of you don't know who I am. So I'm a career salesman, sales director, CEO. I've worked with and run small businesses for my entire career. And these days I focus primarily on two aspects. One is providing sort of sales training and coaching to small businesses, particularly those that are run by what you might think of as technical specialists. So people who don't necessarily have a background in professional selling. And the other thing I also do is more generic small business coaching. So quite often I'm working with small businesses in normal times, helping them plan for the future, whether that's looking at expansion or getting better control over their business, or perhaps even looking towards some sort of exit in the future. I love working with small businesses. It's my absolute passion. And the couple of instances in my career where I did work for large global corporates, I hated every minute of it. So I love the whole aspect of rolling your sleeves up and getting stuck in. So I want to start with a thought of the day, and there's when you look at the word for crisis when it's written in Chinese, there's a famous quote from John F. Kennedy, and he said, when written in Chinese, the word crisis is composed of two characters. One represents danger, the other represents opportunity. And the interesting thing is these two characters are Wei and Xi, but interestingly, JFK wasn't actually entirely correct in his translation. But the issue now, or the point is that the mistranslation now is so widely spread, it's even used by some native Chinese speakers. And regardless of that, what we're faced with now, excuse me, somebody else just joining us. So what we're faced with right now is most certainly a crisis. But at the same time, it is also potentially a time of real opportunity. And that opportunity will take form in sort of three ways, really. So firstly is an opportunity for each of us to take a leadership role in helping our team if we have one at their time of greatest need. Secondly, an opportunity to be really proactive in communicating with our clients, with our customers. And thirdly, an opportunity to make a plan for a more sustainable and resilient business, or, I hate to say it, but in the worst case, a plan to exit your business with the minimum negative impact on you and your team if you have one. So for our agenda today, we're going to cover a few things. That I've got two or three sort of mindsets that are particularly valuable in times like these where you're facing situations that you've probably almost certainly never seen before in your working life, and hopefully will never see again. And the whole point of having the right mindset, the right attitude, will help hugely in being able to deal with these situations. We'll then have a look at sort of building a plan for a number of aspects, but obviously for yourself as an individual, your team if you have one, and also a plan for your business. I'll then touch on some of the support that's potentially available if you want it, and we'll quickly cover off some options for you in terms of next steps, and then we'll move into questions later on. Please feel free to take whatever notes you like. I'm more than happy afterwards to send copies of the slides to you, and there are also additional things that we can send to you after the event, which I'll touch on later. So if we look at the first of the mindsets that I would strongly recommend that we consider, and this business model is arguably one of the most powerful I've ever seen, and I use it regularly when I'm going through coaching calls with clients. And it's called the Orbed model. Now, in times of crisis, we have two choices about how we can respond. We can act below the line, or we can act above the line. And below the line actions would go something along these lines. So we could blame someone else for bringing a virus into our country. We could make excuses why there's nothing we can do about it. Or maybe we can go into complete and utter denial that there's even an issue. And in doing so, put ourselves, our team, and our business at huge risk. Alternatively, we can act above the line. So we could take ownership that we can and we must do something to protect ourselves and our business, and sadly, in some cases, even if that means closing our business. Secondly, we could recognize that we're accountable to our team and our customers at their time of greatest need. And thirdly, we can take responsibility for protecting ourselves, our team, our customers, and our business from these difficult times. So just letting somebody else in. So this Orbed model is hugely powerful, and as I said, I use it on a regular basis when I'm in coaching sessions with clients. And this whole point about taking a very positive attitude to facing some really difficult circumstances, but understanding that there are genuinely things that we can do either as individuals or collectively, it will help you hugely in addressing the situation that's facing you. The second model I'd also like to suggest for you is a model that we call the be, do, have principle. So as well as acting above the line, we also have to consider who we need to be in these times. In other words, looking at our sort of personal brand and our identity. So if we're not careful, we could act like this. So we could think along the lines of, when I have got through these pressing client matters, I'll be able to do things like make a plan to get through this and talk to my team about what all this means for them, so that I can then be a great leader of my business and my team. However, if you turn this on its head, a far better mindset to have is actually the other way round. So in order to be a great leader of my business, I need to do things like update my plan and get proactive with my team and my customers and my suppliers during this crisis. And then I'll have the most successful business that I can in these difficult times. So rather than looking at where you want to get to in the future, if you think about what you need to be, what you need to do right now in the short term and get that done, it will put you in a much, much stronger position to be able to then work and continue to develop and sustain your business in the long run. And the third and final model I want to share with you is one that was originally suggested by Sir Richard Branson. So, love him or hate him, he's an incredibly successful character. And it serves as a great reminder as to where we need to place our most energy right now. So thinking about who we need to look after in these times, and of course, I think most of us, if not all of us on this session, are business owners in our own right. So who we need to look after, first and foremost, it's about you, it's about me, it's as the owner of the business. But we also need to think about our team. We also need to look after our customers, and we need to look after the business. So what we find as owners are that all of our energy is split between the team, the customers, and the business itself, and typically with very little time to look after ourselves. And what Sir Richard gives us is a really useful model to follow. So clients do not come first, employees come first. If you take care of your employees, they will take care of the clients. So if we look after the team, make sure as an owner that you're doing whatever you can to look after them. And bear in mind that even with a team, we could also be talking about things like contractors or subcontractors. So potentially if we're outsourcing parts of the business, maybe we work with a virtual PA, or maybe we have some sort of virtual bookkeeping or accounting service. They are absolutely part of your overall team. So maybe they're not employed directly for you, employed directly by you. I would still view them very, very much as part of your team. And of course, by looking after your team well, they'll be well equipped to look after your customers. And you might, for example, talk to your team about a complete pivot in your sales plan to cope with these challenging times. Maybe a new product or service, and the team can pass on this message to existing or new customers. And if you pivot your sales message and your team look after or find new customers, then those customers will look after your business. And if the new sales plan is in place, then the business will look after you as the owner. Now, I absolutely appreciate that this may seem a little bit oversimplified. And some of you on this webinar won't have a team. But the point here is that it all starts with you as the owner. If you act above the line, remember who you need to be and make a new plan now, and then share it with your team as they can look after your customers so you don't get overwhelmed. If you don't have a team, the plan needs to start with your customers, who will then look after the business, and so on. And we want to help you build this plan as the business owner. And the starting point of this plan has to be your own personal resilience itself. And so knowing that model from Sir Richard Branson starts with you as the business owner, let's talk about what you can do to improve your resilience right now. And now remember that your well-being is absolutely critical. If you've been on an aeroplane, you're always told to put the oxygen mask on yourself first before helping anyone else. And this is exactly the same scenario. So, obvious stuff, but make sure you stay healthy, get as much sleep as you can, keep your exercise going, and get support if you need it. Don't be afraid to put your hand up and say, I need some help. But also select your information sources carefully and try to minimize the time that you spend on social media about the COVID issue. I mean, we're swamped with it. Every news bulletin is 95% related to COVID right now. And for some of us, it can be quite overwhelming to just be flooded with all these negative messages. So stay calm, stay connected with friends and family, and above all, stay positive. But also for those of you with families, focus on their needs as well. Their health and well-being is extremely important. So make a plan for how they can be supported, especially if some of them have to go into isolation. And a really empowering thing you can do is to work on your own personal budget. It doesn't need to be complex. It could be as simple as totaling your expenditure from the last month or two, just to identify your monthly personal costs. From there, identify where you can make savings. So, for example, on entertainment, on coffee, or travel, or gifts, or holidays. They'll come back in the future, but they're not important right now. Every saving that you can make will take that little bit of pressure off what the business needs to provide to you. And remember, for most of us, our business is really a means to achieving some form of personal goal. So when we started, we were looking to generate, a set level of income, or we were perhaps looking to save towards retirement, or we were looking to get a better work-lifestyle balance. And the business is there to serve you. So if you take some of the pressure off your personal financial requirements, then it takes some of the pressure off the business to generate that cash for you as well. So similarly, think about your personal asset planning and planning for your family. So things like making sure your personal insurances, so things like life insurance, income protection, wills, memorandum of wishes are up to date. And make sure that you and your appropriate family members have powers of attorney in place. It might sound a little bit dramatic and quite almost negative thinking, but it's being realistic. Now, there are different kinds of powers of attorney to think about here. So firstly, if you're over 18 years old and have the mental ability to make financial, property and medical decisions for yourself, you can arrange for someone else to make these decisions for you in the future. And this is called a property and financial affairs lasting power of attorney. And secondly, You can also arrange for decisions about your daily routine, so things like washing, dressing, eating, and medical care, and so on. And this one's called a personal welfare lasting power of attorney. It can only be used if you as an individual are unable to make your own decisions. So generally, it's recommended that you set up both a personal welfare lasting power of attorney and a property and financial affairs lasting power of attorney at the same time. Many people do this while reviewing or revising their will. I certainly did it a few years back, and you may be able to use the same solicitor for it. You can also apply online for a power of attorney at the gov.uk website, and alternatively, you can contact the Office of the Public Guardian for an application pack. Again, I can supply details of these contacts for you in the handouts at the end of the session. So now is a really good time to make sure that you have these EPAs, these powers of attorney, in place, or review who you've appointed in the past to make sure that the person that you've appointed is still capable and willing to act. So if we've taken time to consider our own personal resilience, then the next step is to then look at the resilience of our team, whether those are people we're employing directly or in an extended sort of subcontract team. Now, obviously, for those of you with a team, your team members are going to be worried about job security. And we know, and the government has stated this, that there will be job losses, sadly, during this period. So be really open with your team. Share relevant parts of your plan with them and be honest about the potential impact that this pandemic will have on the business. If there are to be job losses in your business, ensure that you get legal and HR advice on the best way to handle the restructuring and redundancy process. And it's likely that people are going to remain in some form of lockdown, certainly for the next 3 weeks. We already know that. I suspect it's going to be a little bit longer than that, and it's going to be quite a while before we get back up to sort of full removal of the lockdown scenario. So work on that basis, work on planning for that to be the case, because then you're looking at the worst case scenario. So decide what additional resources you need to provide your team with if you haven't done that already, and consider how you can obviously best utilize technology to maintain team communication. And also, if you haven't already done it, make sure you have a COVID-19 policy in place to keep your team safe and let them know what support is available to them. And I'll come back to the government support in more detail later on. And once we've looked after the resilience of our team, then we can start looking at resilience of our clients and how we communicate with them. Now, remember that the support you offer your customers now is going to impact the support your customers give you in the future. Customers need to be reassured that you're still operating and that you're taking specific measures to mitigate their exposure to the virus. So your policies should cover the steps your business is taking to protect your customers, and share this information with them to offer reassurance that you're taking every practicable step to reduce the risk and protect both your customers and your team. Secondly, review your terms of trade and update the terms to reflect your changing business practices. We'll talk about this in a bit more detail later, but share your updated terms of trade with your customers, specifically highlighting key changes. And in particular, review your payment terms and your delivery terms. And remember to enforce your terms of trade at this time. So don't let customers avoid paying you, as this could have a material impact on the sustainability of your business. Now, I'm not saying that you should be absolutely brutal with your customers, because some of them will be in real critical situations at the moment. But start from the point of assuming that you're still working on insisting that your customers continue to pay you. And you might then need to have individual discussions with a small proportion of your customer base. And as we mentioned earlier, I'd said you need to remember to put the oxygen mask on yourself first. It's essential that you make sure you have sufficient cash coming into your business from your customers. And remember that cash is the oxygen your business needs to survive. And we'll talk more about cash flow management shortly, as there are always things that you can do here. Once we've considered how we're going to work with our clients, then we can move on to looking at how we work with our suppliers. And to improve your cash flow, you need to make a plan for dealing with your suppliers. So where you can, negotiate new payment terms with your suppliers. If you can pay up front, so if you have the cash to pay up front, then perhaps ask for a prompt payment discount. If you don't have sufficient cash flow to pay up front, ask your supplier to potentially pay over a longer period of time. Or ask if it's possible to hold stock on consignment where you only pay the supplier once you've sold that stock. Discuss your supplier's supply chain and the measures they're taking to continue supply, because you obviously want to be reassured that you can still get the products and services you need. Ask about their contingency plans for what may happen if deliveries can't be made or supplies can't be obtained. Consider whether you need to order additional stock while it's available, if it's likely to become scarce in the coming months, and reduce your current minimum reordering levels and consider whether there are some items of stock that shouldn't be reordered at all. Also, review your supplier contracts in regard to the return of stock. Discuss whether you can return excess stock that isn't selling, and ensure that your contracts are updated if any of the terms change. If you can't return stock, then consider discounting slow-moving items to convert it back into cash. And of course, remember, don't reorder that same stock. And then finally, review the contracts that you have with suppliers. Is there a clause which would allow you to cancel orders or change the terms in this current crisis? If you can't meet the terms of your contract, seek legal advice and negotiate with the supplier. And then finally, review all other key contracts. So with lessors of premises, vehicles and equipment, you may need to try and renegotiate significant terms. But don't assume that these contracts can't be renegotiated. Just as your current cash flow and the ability to meet financial obligations may be significantly impacted right now, some of these key providers are going to be prepared to renegotiate terms, because they will be in a similar position to you as well. So one of the most important ways to improve your business is to shorten the cash conversion cycle. In other words, get the cash in quicker. So let's take a look at a real example here. And this one we're looking at is a wholesaler. Now, the wholesaler will buy stock from suppliers and on average must pay the suppliers 45 days after buying the stock. Now, the stock doesn't sell the moment it comes into the warehouse. Some of it will sell quickly, other items will take longer, and eventually some stock items will have to be discounted to get it to move at all. And on average, in this example, the stock is being held for 60 days. When the stock is sold, credit terms are provided to customers, but a number of customers are not observing those credit terms. So on average, it's taking 60 days for customers to pay. So now we can calculate the cash conversion cycle. So 60 days average stock holding, plus 60 days to get paid by the customers, less the 45 days credit that we're provided by the suppliers. And that equals a total of 75 days to convert inputs into cash. Now, in difficult times like these, sorry, I'm getting a notification on my screen. So in difficult times like these, what we need to do is to ensure we have a plan in place to shorten this cash conversion cycle. And this is a process that we would absolutely recommend you do as part of your business continuity plan. So using the numbers from your most recent management accounts, you can work out these numbers above, the numbers that you're looking at here, and calculate your cash conversion cycle. And from there, we can discuss with you how we can work together to shorten the cash cycle and free up more cash. And to give you an example of this, if your debtors are £50,000, and you've got a turnover of £500,000 a year, a 10-day reduction in your cash conversion cycle is worth £13,700 in your bank now. And that's cash that you could really do with right now, I'm sure. So for those of you with teams, perhaps that's the mechanism for you to either pay this month's payroll or pay the 20% additional for those that you put on furlough. So part of completing your business continuity plan is to work out how to free up as much cash flow as possible using this model. Another area of focus needs to be on what we call the Business 101 cycle in these times. So as I say to my clients on a regular basis, there's a massive difference between profit and cash. Profit is what you pay tax on. Cash is the oxygen your business needs to survive. So what's so important here is that as well as improving your cash conversion cycle, you make plans to maximize your profit and at the same time finance your business correctly. So let's walk through this business 101 cycle. So starting at the top, as an owner, you introduce cash into the business to buy assets, and you might also borrow some cash to purchase some assets. And those assets are then used to generate a profit. How you increase profit is to improve revenue or sales, clearly very difficult right now, but still possible for some of you. Increase your gross margin, or improve your efficiency, or trim your overhead expenses. So now is a really good time to be looking closely at potential new revenue lines, new potential customers, perhaps a pivot in your sales strategy, or what you can do to avoid losing existing customers. And at the same time, you ought to be looking at how you can improve your margins via efficiency gains, better purchasing, reduction in errors and wastage, or simply discontinuing with products or services that have a poor margin. And once you've derived your profit, you then need to turn that into cash. Profitable businesses can and do go broke at times like these. There was an announcement this morning, I think, that Virgin Australia is going into receivership. And again, they're highly profitable, but they're running out of cash, and that's their issue. So you need to be looking at how you can maximize your cash flow using strategies to get paid quicker, reduce stock or work in progress, or by negotiating better payment terms with your suppliers. Now is not the time to be slow or lenient on debt collection. We need that money to keep spinning around in the economy. And likewise, you need to be really careful about reordering stock. Can you operate with less stock or other items that are likely to be in short supply? Other areas to help improve your cash flow are through better terms with your financiers. Can you go on to interest only, for example, on some of your loans if you have them? And I'll cover more on finance shortly. And likewise, there are many tax concessions available right now too, so you'll want to make sure you access them. Again, I'll go through these in more detail shortly. Now, I've talked about the cash conversion cycle and the Business 101 model. This business growth equation is usually a model I use when I'm talking to my coaching clients about how they're going to grow their business, how they're going to increase their profits. And so there are 7 ways that you can grow your business, grow your profits. Only this time, we're going to use the model to find other areas to focus that might reduce the negative impact of a downturn. So number 1 is increase client retention. So what can you do to really delight your clients or customers right now? Many of them will also be struggling, so stay in contact and see how you can hold on to their business wherever possible. Secondly, you should still also be looking for new avenues to attract potential new customers. Increasing your marketing using cost-effective methods such as social media could be a great way to attract new business. Thirdly, make sure you're making it as easy as possible for customers to buy from you. So obviously, though, without giving away your value or your product for free. So can you offer delivery or an online ordering option at this point in time? Fourthly, can you encourage your customers to buy more from you? Are there other supporting products or services that perhaps they're not aware of at this point? Fifthly, what can you do to encourage customers to come back more regularly? For example, locking in their next purchase or the next order or the next meeting at the end of the current transaction, or at least asking for a referral for a new customer if your work is more of a sort of one-off nature. Number 6 is all about reducing cost of sales. What can you do to preserve your current margins? Can you reduce errors or rework? Could you perhaps get a better price from your suppliers, or focus on the products or services that give you the greatest margin? And the 7th one is looking at your overheads. So which costs can be removed from your business altogether right now? Travel, entertainment, vehicle costs could be a good place to start. And often one of the highest overheads in the business are interest costs to financiers. And if you add the principal reductions required on loans as well, this can be a massive drain on the business. So here's a list of the ways that the bank or your other financiers might be able to help you. So we could be looking at, increasing temporary overdraft facilities, or reviewing and extending trade credit terms. perhaps asset finance funding. You may want to look at things like invoice discounting to get cash in now rather than waiting for your customers to pay. Perhaps there are things we can do about getting holidays on loan repayments or deferment of repayments, perhaps even extending term lending periods or taking out short-term and hardship loans. Certainly in your personal life as well, potentially in your business life, look at short-term mortgage holidays. They can have a huge impact. And similarly, if you have business credit cards, are there options that you might have to defer payments to those suppliers? So part of your business continuity plan should be a discussion with your bank or your financiers about how they can help you. Potentially, I'm not a qualified financial advisor, but I'm more than happy to talk to you first about some of the best options that you might want to go to the bank with. Similarly with your insurances, whilst most business insurance policies are likely to have exclusions for COVID-19 type pandemics, it's still important to review them. So, are there particular HR issues that you need to be aware of and take account for? If you have premises that you're not working in right now, just make sure that your insurances do cover for things like theft and loss of property, especially if the premises are not being occupied on a regular basis. Are there any issues around statutory liability that you need to have in place, or professional indemnity for those of us who are involved in things like professional services? Or perhaps you have things like shareholder buyout or key person insurance policies, especially if, perhaps some of your key individuals within the business are older, perhaps a little more liable to suffer from the virus. So make sure that you cover off and check that your insurances are in place and still valid. Now, this slide that you're looking at now was up to date as of Friday last week, but I would definitely recommend following the updates made on the HMRC website because they're changing all the time. So just to quickly run through what the government has already announced is available as additional support for businesses. So VAT registered businesses with VAT payments due between the 20th of March this year and 30th of June can choose to defer the payments until the end of March 2021, or you can still pay the VAT due as normal if you want. Please remember though, if you normally pay your VAT by direct debit, cancel the direct debit instruction now, because HMRC can't do it for you. So if the direct debit is still in place, when you submit your next VAT return, HMRC will automatically just go and take the payment from your bank account. So if you're paying by direct debit, cancel it now, but not if you're in a refund position. So if you're one of the few businesses that normally gets a VAT refund each quarter, clearly leave the direct debit in place. Your VAT returns still need to be filed as normal though. It's just the payment that's deferred. Secondly, the job retention scheme. So HMRC will reimburse 80% of the furloughed workers' gross pay up to £2,500 a month, plus employers' national insurance and the minimum auto-enrolment employer pension contribution. As an employer, you have the choice whether or not you top this payment up to 100% of the employee's wages. And HMRC actually launched the access to the portal yesterday. It went live yesterday morning. There were one or two minor teething problems that I saw, but for the most part, I worked with hundreds of accountants, and for the most part, the reports I was seeing coming back from them was that it was working okay. And I think on the news last night, they were saying there was something like 163,000 registrations had gone through. So that is now in place. You can either do the application yourself or talk to your accountant to get them to do it for you, particularly if they run your payroll for them. And the job retention scheme will be open, say, as of now, and the first reimbursements will be made on the 30th of April, so 10 working days after making the application. Now, the Self-Employment Income Support Scheme supports self-employed individuals, including members of partnerships who've lost income due to COVID-19. This scheme allows you to claim a taxable grant worth 80% of your trading profits up to a maximum of £2,500 a month for the next 3 months. It might be extended if needed. HMRC will aim to contact people by mid-May 2020 and will make payments by early June 2020. Please remember, if you are a director of your own limited company, you are not classified as self-employed. So if you're a director of a limited company and you pay yourself, as many of us do, a small salary, and the bulk of our income comes from dividends, the only thing that you can get support on at the moment would be if you furloughed yourself, and you'd be able to claim the 80% of your normal monthly salary. I'm aware of a number of petitions, online petitions, trying to get the government to look at this, because for many small businesses, the dividend is the primary source of income for the owners. But at this point in time, there's no specific help for us in that respect. The coronavirus statutory sick pay rebate scheme will repay employers the current rate of SSP that they pay to current or former employees for periods of sickness starting on or after the 13th of March 2020. And that repayment will cover up to 2 weeks starting from the first day of sickness if an employee is unable to work because they either have coronavirus or cannot work because they're self-isolating at home. And then the Coronavirus Business Interruption Loan Scheme. This is supposed to support small and medium-sized businesses with an annual turnover of up to £45 million. And the government has said there'll be no interest or lender fees for 12 months. These were started about 2-3 weeks ago, and in the early days I was seeing lots of reports where the banks seemed to be dragging their heels, or they were asking for personal guarantees from directors. That appears to have now been deemed as completely inappropriate, so you shouldn't be being asked for personal guarantees on these loans. But I also think that the banks are swamped with the number of applications, so they will typically tend to focus their attention on supporting their existing customers. If, like me, you don't bank with one of the high street banks, and you perhaps use one of the newer fintech online banks, many of those have now applied to be included in this scheme, and I know those applications are in place, and those particular banks are hoping to be able to start offering additional support very shortly. And then the final one, the business rates holiday for businesses in the retail, hospitality and leisure sector, and also nursery businesses. There is a business rates holiday for the 2020 to 2021 tax year. Now, there's a huge amount of information that we've been through there. So really, I guess the key thing is, what are your next steps? Now, we've set out for you the mindsets you need to have in these challenging and difficult times. So what you need to do to look after yourself, your team, and your customers. And I've shared some ideas for how you can improve your sales, your margin, your profit, and cash flow, even if that improvement is simply slowing the speed of the decline that you're seeing. We've also shared in general terms what support is available from the government and other sources. Now it's essential that you decide what you're going to do. And clearly, doing nothing is simply not an option. Now's the time to put the oxygen mask on yourself and make a plan to get through this crisis. Even if, sadly, that plan involves closing your business, you're better off to make that decision sooner rather than later. Part of that planning is to surround yourself with experts. It could be your bank, it could be your solicitor, it could be your accountant, possibly maybe even us, maybe even me. So, but remember above all to stay above the line and live into that be, do, have mindset. Focus on what you can do. And with this in mind, we've developed a business continuity plan and a guide, which I'll show you briefly now. And we can send this to you after the event. So if I skip across now to the plan itself, you should now be looking at a business continuity plan template. And the way to think of this is a comprehensive checklist of things that you can consider looking at to help put in place the strategies and the actions to safeguard yourself, your family, your team, your personal finances, your business finances. So within here, we've got sections about your own personal resilience, putting your family first, reviewing and updating your personal budget, reviewing and updating insurances, creating wills, and so on, all the way through to actions to help support your team, updating your team and ongoing communication. Do we need to change roles of people within the business? Do we need to update goals and KPIs? Are there things we need to do to support our team working from home? Do we need to change flexibility of working hours? Now, as you can see, this is a pretty comprehensive list that will go through every aspect of your personal life, your business life, to try and find areas where you can take action that will safeguard your current situation, perhaps improve your situation, look at trying to maximize the profit, maximize your incoming cash flow as well, all the way down to the bottom at looking at, do we need to talk to the bank? Do we need to review insurance? Are there tax support that we need? And so on. Now, this plan I'm more than happy to share with you. In addition to the plan itself, we also have a guide on how to create and develop your own business continuity plan. So in here, there is lots and lots of guidance on how to, or what to think about in completing that plan and completing that set of actions. So again, I won't go through the whole detail. It's fairly lengthy, but it goes into lots of detail about the sorts of things that you need to be thinking about in order to complete your plan and make it effective. So there's a lot of information and support available to you. The key thing is really potentially how, if you want help from us, how we can help you. And there are three options in here. Firstly, one is if you're really unsure about it, we can set up an online business continuity planning session. These things typically take around 4 hours, or we can split them into two 2-hour sessions. The fee we would charge for this is £500 plus VAT. The second option is that I can send you the plan template and I can send you the guide, and you go and create your own plan. And then we arrange a 90-minute online review session to go through the plan, and I'll see if I can make any observations, suggestions, and see if there's any way that we can enhance it. The fee for that service is £175 plus VAT. Now, those fees, I'm very, very aware that given the circumstances we're in right now, cash is absolutely king, and nobody wants to incur costs that aren't absolutely necessary. But similarly, I have to keep my business running and my cash flow operating. So those fees have been discounted at 50% off the normal fees that we would charge for this type of service. The third option is that I can send you the business planning template, and I can also send you the guide, and that you go away and do your own plan and work off your own back. So, and that's I'm more than happy to do that. So the three options: one is we work jointly on your plan. Secondly is you create your plan and then we jointly review it together. Thirdly is you create your own plan yourself. Okay, so that covers the three options that are available to you. I'm just going to quickly look and see if anybody, if I just pop into the chat side and see if I can see any questions. Okay, I've not seen any. If you do have any questions, feel free to type them into the chat box. But I did mention earlier on that I'd had one or two come through before the session of people that were really, really worried. And the first one, it really pains me to read out the question, because it's clearly a really challenging time for this individual. And I'll read it out verbatim. It says, I've lost close to 40% of my revenue in the last month, and I can't see that my business will even survive long enough to do a plan. What should I do? My answer to that is, look, the situation is changing on a daily basis, and so is the level of government support available. I would recommend that talk to us about your situation, as there may be assistance available that you're not aware of. But absolutely, come and talk to me. I may or may not be able to help, but there may be things that we can come up with collectively together that will help address some of the issues that you're facing. But you have my absolute sympathy. That's a painful situation. And the other one that came through was, which is a little bit more generic. It said, could you please provide a rundown of the specific support that is available from the government? And again, really, the answer is that it's changing on a sort of regular basis, and very much depends on the nature and structure of your business. So, for example, there are quite a few different support options available for employees than there are for self-employed people, and you may also be self-employed and also pay wages. So, and likewise, there are many different treatments for expenditure on assets that it doesn't warrant me going into all the detail here. So, I'm not wanting to be to come across as evasive here at all. I just want to be able to provide advice on a client-by-client basis, and that's why we've set up the different continuity planning options. Another one that I came across the other day from an accountant that I do some work with, who came up with a brilliant idea. If any of you have either claimed R&D tax credits in the past, there is a lovely technique that you can do. So let's say, for example, your financial year end is the end of December. If you work with your accountant, pull your year end forward to, say, the end of June, that would allow you to submit your R&D tax credit claim earlier than you would ordinarily have done, which means you'll get the cash in the bank earlier than would normally be the case. And I know quite a few people who've done that. It's perfectly legitimate. R&D tax credits are being turned around really quickly. I get the impression HMRC are deliberately adding support to do this for you as well. So if you're in the realms of being able to claim for R&D tax credits, do it, and do it now. Just had a comment all right, from Tim Cole, who's on the call. It's not really a question, but it's an offer of additional support. So he says, I've taken a lot from this, thanks Phil. I run a mortgage and insurance brokerage. If I can help anyone with some free advice on any products that you have, please let me know. So thank you very much for that, Tim. I'll dig out your contact details. If anybody does want to be put in touch with Tim, so they've got any questions around mortgage or insurance, let us know after this, and we'll put you in contact with Tim. So, okay, so unless there are any other questions, I just want to leave you with a parting thought. So, and this is a really nice quote from Robin Sharma. It says, "Anyone can lead when the plan is working. The best lead when the plan falls apart." And believe me, everybody's business plans, if we had one, have fallen apart over the last sort of 4 to 6 weeks. And now is the time really to step up to the plate. If there's anything that I can do to help you, please get in touch. My contact details are on the screen here. So either drop me an email or give me a call. We will be sending out a short email questionnaire after the event, which will also give you the option to ask for additional support. So please fill in the questionnaire. If you do want a copy of the continuity business plan, the business continuity plan template and the guide, answer the questions on the questionnaire or drop me an email. I will happily send it through to you. And if you do want to talk to me individually, again, please get in touch. Thank you so much for your time. I wish you all the very best of luck over the coming weeks. Hopefully you'll be able to see some opportunities ahead of you as well as some challenges, but stay strong, remember those mindsets, and keep on top of the situation as it continues to develop. Thank you so much for your time, and goodbye, at least for now.